So guys, I just tried the Black Ice mod in HOI4 and well,
I liked it.
For those unaware, Black Ice is a mod that's existed alongside the Hearts of Iron series for over a decade, starting with HOI3. Its main goal is to deliver a historically immersive experience for people who are brave enough to deal with what that entails for you. Today, I decided to finally take the plunge, and I wasn't going to start with an easy nation. I was going to go straight in as the main antagonist to see if I would sink or swim under the pressure. So to achieve that historically immersive experience, the mod throws a lot of new stuff at you to figure out. You have to have very good game knowledge to know what to do, because it is very easy for an inexperienced player to fall for the many noob traps around the mod. For example, look at the German focus tree. It's absolutely massive, with focuses pertaining to everything the Germans did during this time period, but you don't have enough time to get through a majority of it, so you have to make hard decisions about what is a worthwhile focus and what is garbage. I might as well go over some of the other stuff this mod overhauls. The tech tree has been completely changed, with major nations like Germany getting their own unique air and tank technologies. In addition to that, many research slots are limited to select categories, so this research slot, for example, will only be able to research tank technologies, or another will only be able to research infantry and artillery tech. So you may look at something like the massive industry tree and think this seems like a little bit much, and wonder how a player is supposed to keep up, and it's simple. You don't. It's not all bad though. I do really like their doctrine tech system, basically choosing your offensive and defensive doctrine to mix and match. There's also the production, where there's a lot more you have to make for your divisions, even making the uniforms for your soldiers. There is also a thing called tank and air production capacity, which are resources to put a soft cap on how many factories you can use to build tanks and aircraft. There are a lot of things to balance to keep track of when you play through this mod, and it's almost like the devs are encouraging you to take meth to be able to keep up with everything for that extra layer of immersion. Now, I'm a bit worried about how all this new stuff will work together, but as I start playing the mod's music playlist, I realize I'm in good hands. The LARPers are in control. Since this is a historical Germany campaign, I'm just gonna do normal stuff, and I'll keep the pre-war stuff brief. The Spanish Civil War goes off normally, and I like how the mod has decisions to represent the support the Germans gave to the nationalists. I even used some transport planes to get Franco in charge. I realized I never thought about the Navy yet, so I thought I could make some good raiding cruisers and thought, okay, the naval designer doesn't look that different, until I saw the choice of modules, which made me accept that I would not be learning Navy in this mod. The mod allows you to Anschluss before the historical time if you boost fascism enough in Austria, so I was trying that, but my spies suck. The day after I send more spies, one of them gets caught. It just makes me wonder what this woman was doing to get caught that fast.
Look dumb. I'm no racist.
Yeah, that's very easy to say.
What a racist.
Also, I just discovered that there is an entire menu dedicated to building historically accurate SS divisions. I mean, they really suck, as most SS divisions did, but I gotta respect the dedication to LARP. With my Austrian operations not turning out well, I decided to focus more espionage efforts on France, but the new spy I sent got the other one caught as soon as she arrived, which is an even more impressive blunder than in Austria.
You didn't follow my instructions! Oh, well, Heil Hitler, bitch!
Since it's almost 1938, I figure I should build some tanks, so let's take a look at that designer and... oh. The mod devs must have known most people aren't going to bother with this, since they have a screen dedicated to unlocking historical designs for you to build. Anyways, fast forward to September 1939. I couldn't quite get the historical start date for the war, but I at least did everything right. Franco leads Spain, I got Austria and the Czechs without a war. It was time to plan my invasion of Poland. I may only have 3 tank divisions, but I would be able to make up for it with an ambitious plan to paradrop around the Polish capital and destroy their supply network. When the invasion starts though, that plan does not go nearly as well as I imagined. The tanks link up with some of the paratroopers, but the Poles are able to surround most of them. Student promised me greatness with his plan, and now he comes back to report that 2/3 of the paratroopers launched were lost to Polish peasants. Despite that loss, the army pushes through and capitulates the country. But this was just a warm-up. The first real test was France. The Luftwaffe was flying over and reporting great news with air trades. I'd assembled 7 fine tank divisions for the offensive. And how fine? Well, if we look at their stats, I can say that they have some. We were gonna have to go around the Maginot, and while the Luftwaffe was doing great handling the French Air Force, the RAF was very concerning since they had a very good chance of having way more planes than me. Nothing I can do about it now, so time to dive right in. My quick dash through the Ardennes with my tanks doesn't really work out because apparently my tanks don't do well in the forest, especially when you have a bunch of enemy aircraft stopping your cast from flying. So, since I can't follow the cannon path, I gotta do things a bit differently. I focus my air on the Dutch and push them until they surrender to shorten my front line. This also exposed the Allied flank, allowing me to renew my offensive in Belgium and use my tanks to surround French and Belgian divisions in Brussels. With just the open plains of France, you think it'd be a cakewalk, right? Well, you may have forgot, my tanks are kinda... no, actually, they're straight up bad. I'm trying to make this offensive work, but things are stacking up against me. Norway decides to break the law and declare war on me, and after 4 straight months of fighting, the Luftwaffe is now busting out biplanes to be able to take on the RAF. But I have 9 tank divisions now. They aren't good, but quantity has its own qualities, and I made good breakthroughs to surround the French in Calais and Lille. My next move was to concentrate my air over eastern France, where the Allies had no air presence, to make another pocket. The initial breakthroughs went really well, because amazing things happen when you can actually fly your CAS. The final result wasn't great, but at least it moved many French and British out of position. I think it's nearly over for France as I make my final big push for Paris, but things can never go my way for long. After I negotiate a tech agreement with the Soviets, they just embargo me. I guess nobody cares about the lore here except for me. So there goes my oil supply, and there are no other sources I can rely on to meet my demand in this offensive. The little fuel I can get just goes to the tanks since I need them to take Paris. With the fall of that city, I just snake any other VPs I needed in the north until the French finally surrendered, leaving some BEF stranded. Now I have a moment to rest, gain some fuel, and check on Italy, which recently joined the war. Although they lost some key Libyan ports to naval invasions, they did push to El Alamein, so they weren't too incompetent.
2 weeks later.
Oh, never mind. There's Italy I know and acknowledge. Well, it looks like the Italians need some German support. I sent 2 tanks over and... well...
No. Wait. Wait.
1.25 made it across. I was so focused on this that I didn't even notice the British tried an early D-Day against me. As I focused on containing the naval invasions in France and Libya, I thought I could do a quick invasion of Denmark, and the Danes did what they do best. Rolled over submissively and accepted their German overlords. Norway was next on the list, and I was gonna give the paratroopers another try to prove themselves by having them land around Oslo to secure the port for a German army to transport over and arrive there. And when the paratroopers landed, Oslo was a lot better garrisoned than I expected. The entire Norwegian army is now descending upon them, and I can't do much to help. I started a naval invasion of another port, but by the time I secured the port, a third of them had already died. At this point, I gave up on using paratroopers because they are awful in this mod. You can't even drop them with any artillery to at least make them have somewhat decent stats. The regular infantry can grind through Norway at least, but the tanks in Libya are just oversized paperweights because the Italians will not do any port garrisons. The Brits just naval invade behind, taking the ports, and I can't do anything due to lack of supplies. There's only so much incompetence a man can stand, and I need to invade the Soviets soon anyways, so I just dip. Iraq, sadly, had a very bad read of the situation, with them thinking now was the time to join the Axis with a coup, because there was no way we were gonna help them. Their Italian saviors were getting thrown out of Egypt, and Germany was going home. I thought I'd have to invade Yugoslavia, but they just joined the Axis freely, and didn't even have a coup about it. Norway capitulated soon, and the only loose end before Barbarossa was Greece, since Italy had been unable to push them for 6 months, but they couldn't really fight against my panzers, so they were quickly resolved. So, it was time to invade the Soviets. Our intel on them really wasn't telling us much, but we at least had a decent-ish army to invade them, 72 infantry divisions with 14 tanks. We were going to focus everything we had here, and looking at the state of the Italians in Libya, it looks like I was making the right choice. So, you're probably not confident with how well I'm gonna do, and don't worry, so was I. I didn't even have any big strategic plans for 1941. I was just gonna invade and feel out the Soviets' vibes and make attacks based on that. Are military operations based on vibes really a solid strategy? Well, you're about to find out. Vibarossa was a go. At the start, we could just push anywhere. The battles go by so fast and the Soviets have less than 5 org in all their divisions. The border regions are quickly cleaned up, and once the Northern Army Group crosses the Daugava River in the Baltics, Finland feels encouraged to join against the Soviets, but also immediately embargoes me. We're practically on the same side and they're acting like they don't know me. But this war is taking its toll. I need so many divisions to properly look over everything I have in Europe, so by September I'm at 0 manpower, and will need to upgrade my manpower laws very soon. We're going to be looking at every available source for men to put a rifle in their hands. Some people even put out the idea of encouraging women to work to free up manpower, but we weren't going to be that extreme. Despite our lack of manpower, the first 2 months were pretty successful. We had made great gains, and the Soviets lost 680,000 men, while our casualties remained light by comparison. I had to remember I was on a timer until the winter here, and I needed to do as much damage as possible. The Soviet forces in the marshes are pretty hard to dislodge, so surrounding them by pushing from Bobryansk and Kiev would make eliminating them so much easier. Sadly, since I keep running into this problem where my tanks outrun their supply lines, I'm not able to capture all the men I initially hoped for. This was all I could do by the time winter was settling in and froze the front lines, making any other major operations impossible. At least I could use this time to rest and get political power to finally get more people in the army. With more reserve manpower, I could confidently start making offensives again, with the worst of the winter over. But I still had to aim small with my goals since it was still very cold. But as the weather warmed up, I noticed a second major problem. I had gone through all my stored fuel. Since I was desperate, I basically got a bunch of smugglers together to run oil from Venezuela through the blockade to me. But that wasn't going to be enough. I needed more oil, so I just grabbed what I could from anybody who'd be willing to sell to me. So the vibes I was feeling right now were telling me I needed to attack where there was oil. So I would gather my tanks and concentrate them for a big offensive in the south through Ukraine. The Soviet armor in the area was really lacking, so I could slide through their lines with ease. I reached Kharkiv and encircled an entire Soviet army. With the city taken, I could just wait for my supplies to catch up before starting the next phase with the objective of pushing to the sea. Now, for some reason during this offensive, the Allies just stopped blockading me, so I was just freely importing oil from Venezuela. They were just letting me trade with everybody I wanted to, so I could just get out of my impending fuel crisis while I was driving most of my tanks through the Ukrainian fields. I was so far ahead of schedule, I was impressed. Although the main objectives were still in the south, I would have a small group of tank divisions lead an attack on Moscow to keep the pressure on the Soviet center. In Phase 2, by June, I secured most of the vital areas of Ukraine, including Sevastopol, and had forward units in Rostov. Although our main objectives lie quite a distance away, the Russians standing between us and our goal had considerably thinned out. By August, my secondary offensive had reached the outskirts of Moscow, but faced the pesky problem of running out of gas, so I had to halt them. The mod was taunting me with these timers. The cities were so close, yet felt so far away. Despite being the secondary objective, I decided that Moscow needed more support. Tanks were sent north, casually taking out Russians along the way until they were ready to make their play to encircle the city. While this was happening, in the south, the units in the area made their play for Stalingrad. Their logistics in the area was clearly not able to support the offensive, but fortunately, the boys in the lab know how to make it so our men can keep running with minimal food and sleep. They managed to go so fast that Stalingrad was taken without a fight, and a Soviet army corps was encircled in front of the city. Although Moscow still stood resilient against us, Leningrad really couldn't say the same, since I just watched the Finns stroll through it. Winter was approaching, and I really wanted to go for the triple combo this year and take Moscow. Our men were cold, tired, and hungry, but I didn't care. They needed to attack in sub-zero temperatures to take Moscow by Christmas. I actually did manage to encircle the city and thought, great, it's a lock now. But as I was attacking the city, I was stunned to see the Soviets basically cheating to hold on to it by spawning units in combat. So once I finished a battle, I had to fight another set of units who had time to entrench and get their org up, making the combat drag on forever. So the battle lasted months longer than it had any right to, and the Soviets used that time to break out the city as the winter came to a close. But that turned out to be a blessing for me. Now that they wouldn't keep spawning units in the capital, I could actually take it. I felt good after this major victory, but that sense of accomplishment was shattered when I realized that during my time tunnel visioning on Moscow, the Soviets had retaken Stalingrad. 1942 was the year we broke the Soviets' kneecaps, and now in 1943 we were gonna break their back. Both Leningrad and Stalingrad had been retaken last winter, but we were gonna make sure that wouldn't happen again. The Soviets could not replace their massive losses, so the tanks who drove north didn't have many problems to deal with. The Soviets tried a mass retreat from the Baltics, but not everyone was lucky enough to escape. Meanwhile, Stalingrad fell again in the exact same way it did last year. Leningrad took a while longer, but it fell to us in time. The Soviet army was now a shadow of its former self, and any large remaining concentrations of troops would just be easily cut off by tanks and destroyed. You've probably been wondering what the Western Allies have been doing this whole time, and I was wondering that too, since they haven't put much pressure on me besides light bombing. They're not even bombing my industry, just my trains, which, yeah, is annoying, but is clearly not helping the Soviets. Looks like Japan has been facing far more Allied pressure since the Allies are pushing in Siam and retaking the Philippines. I can't just end this campaign without attempting a sea lion though, so I start preparing for that while my troops go through the remaining Soviet cities in the east. I went through half of Siberia though, and they still didn't cap. I really wish I could have told myself a few hours ago to create a collab government to spare me this misery, but I push on regardless. I give Student another try with Special Forces for this operation. Paratroopers may not be the move, but Marines should fare better, right? It took till January 1945 and cost me 1.3 million men and the Soviets 7.6, but they were finally ready to surrender to me. I would personally take everything to the Urals, puppet everything else eastwards, and take their fleet to help with Sea Lion. But apparently destroying the largest communist nation was too much for Japan and Spain because they embargoed me in response. I guess my imperialism really has gone too far now. As for the British, it took a while to get the air supremacy needed to support the naval invasion, but when it finally happened, the Marines did great with all their air support. The British fleet tried to stop us, but we got enough boots on the ground to be a serious issue to them. The Royal Navy failed to stop most of my tanks from crossing, and when they hit the Allied troops with their years of experience from fighting Russians, they didn't stand a chance. We surrounded London and secured Cornwall. Once the German armored forces could focus their attention on the Allies in the north, many troops were trapped in Wales to make their final stand in there and in Liverpool before they finally accepted their fate that the war had been lost. So, I think at this point, it's fair to say I've been pretty successful and can call this campaign finished. Special shout out to my alumni for generously supporting me on Patreon and helping me deliver more of these videos to you. A thing I'm going to be doing in the future is answering questions at the end of the videos that my alumni ask me on Patreon. Like, for example, Ronald Grump asking me, what made me go down the route of a content creator? For me, being friends with Bo and ISP for a while made me interested in trying to make my own content because it seems like a really enjoyable thing to do. I first started with Twitch streaming because it was easier and I liked doing that for a while, but over time I got tired of it because it could suck away so much of your time if you want to do it seriously, and I wasn't really getting much out of it. So, with Vicky 3 coming out soon, I thought this was a great opportunity to try to start a YouTube channel. I had a great start, and hopefully I can keep this momentum going. But anyways, y'all have a great rest of your day, and hope to see ya again.